Captain Sarah Chin stood at the massive viewing window of the Galactic Confederation's Central Assembly Hall, watching ships from 100 different worlds drift past like glowing insects in the cosmic dark. 30 years had passed since humanity first made contact with the galaxy's greatest civilizations. 30 years of playing by their rules, following their laws, and accepting their decisions about what humans could and could not do. Today, everything would change. Behind her, the assembly hall buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. The Veltar delegates sat in their floating chairs, their pale blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights, their long fingers drumming impatiently on their crystal tablets. They had ruled the Confederation for over 1,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. The Krex representatives stood in their heavy battle armor, even here in the peaceful assembly hall. Their red eyes glowed behind their helmets as they watched the proceedings with the cold attention of born warriors. They controlled the military might that kept the Confederation's enemies at bay. The Zephyrians clustered together near their data displays, their insect-like bodies clicking and humming as they processed information faster than most species could think. They managed the vast trade networks that connected thousands of worlds across the galaxy. And then there were the humans. 12 representatives from Earth and its colonies, sitting in the cheap seats at the back of the hall, treated like children who were allowed to watch but not really participate. Sarah turned away from the window as High Chancellor Zenthara called the session to order. The Veltar leader's voice carried easily through the hall, enhanced by technology that made her sound like a goddess speaking from the heavens. Today we address a matter of galactic security, Zenthara announced. The human delegation has brought before us a technology they claim will revolutionize communication across space. We must determine whether this technology is safe for general use. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Safe for general use, as if humans were children playing with dangerous toys. Dr. James Park, Earth's lead scientist, stood up from the human section. He was a small man with graying hair and nervous hands, but his voice was steady as he addressed the assembly. Honored delegates, he began. What we offer today could change everything. Our faster-than-light communication system can send messages instantly across any distance. No more waiting months for news from distant colonies. No more losing touch with exploration fleets. Imagine coordinating trade, military operations, or scientific research in real time across the entire galaxy. The hall erupted in murmurs of interest, but Sarah noticed that the three ruling species remained silent. They had already made up their minds. Krex War Master Gorthak stood up, his armor clanking. How do we know this technology cannot be weaponized? Humans have a history of violence. They fought wars on their own world for thousands of years before achieving spaceflight. Sarah wanted to laugh. The Krex were lecturing humans about violence. Their entire civilization was built on conquest and military might. Dr. Park remained calm. The technology is purely for communication. It cannot be used as a weapon any more than a telephone could be used to destroy a city. Perhaps not directly, said Zephyrian Trade Minister Zixara, her mandibles clicking rapidly. But information is power. Control of communication networks could destabilize existing trade relationships. It could give certain species unfair advantages. Now Sarah understood. This was not about safety. This was about control. The three ruling species had spent centuries building their power on controlling technology, trade routes, and information flow. Humanity's breakthrough threatened all of that. High Chancellor Zenthara raised one pale hand for silence. The Confederation Council has reviewed this technology in closed session. While we acknowledge its potential benefits, we have serious concerns about its implications for galactic stability. Sarah's heart began to race. This was not going according to plan. Therefore, Zenthara continued, we formally request that Earth surrender all research data, prototypes, and manufacturing capabilities for this communication system to the Confederation Science Council for proper evaluation and controlled implementation. The human delegation exchanged shocked glances. Surrender their greatest achievement? Hand over years of research to be locked away in Confederation vaults? Dr. Park found his voice first. With respect, High Chancellor, this technology was developed by human scientists using human resources. We shared it freely in the spirit of cooperation, but we cannot simply give away our entire research program. War Master Gorthak's armor servos whined as he leaned forward. Cannot or will not. There is a difference, human. Sarah stood up, her captain's uniform crisp and her voice carrying the authority of Earth's military. The human delegation respectfully declines to surrender our technology. We offer to share it freely with all Confederation members, but we will not hand over control of our own scientific achievements. The hall fell silent. For 30 years, no one had directly defied the Confederation Council. Smaller species made requests, offered suggestions, or humbly asked for consideration. No one simply said no. High Chancellor Zenthara's blue skin darkened with anger. You forget your place, Captain Chen. Humanity was granted membership in the Confederation as a probationary species. You have not yet proven your readiness for full technological privileges. 30 years, Sarah shot back. We have followed every rule, paid every tax, provided resources for your wars and your trade routes. When will we have proven ourselves enough? When the Council decides you have, Zenthara replied coldly. Until then, dangerous technologies must remain under proper supervision. Dr. Park stood beside Sarah. If you will not allow us to keep our own discoveries, then what is the point of scientific research? What is the point of progress? Zephyrian Minister Zixara's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Progress must be orderly, controlled. The galaxy has known peace for 800 years because the Confederation maintains proper technological balance. We cannot allow one species to disrupt that balance. Sarah looked around the hall at hundreds of alien faces, most of them avoiding her eyes. She realized that many of the smaller species were just as trapped as humanity, just as controlled and limited by the three powers that really ran the Confederation. Very well, she said loudly, her voice carrying to every corner of the assembly hall. If that is how the Confederation sees humanity's contributions, then perhaps humanity should reconsider its membership. The silence that followed was complete. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed to pause. High Chancellor Zenthara recovered first. That would be unfortunate. But if humanity insists on placing its own interests above galactic stability, perhaps separation would be best for everyone. Within 6 hours, the vote was called. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Confederation was terminated by a margin of 800 to 12. Only the human delegates voted against expulsion, but the Confederation was not content with simple expulsion. High Chancellor Zenthara stood before the Assembly one final time that day to announce additional measures. Due to humanity's demonstrated technological recklessness and refusal to accept proper oversight, the Confederation hereby establishes a 50-light-year quarantine zone around all human-controlled space. No Confederation member may trade with, communicate with, or provide aid to human settlements. Any human vessels found outside the quarantine zone will be confiscated, and their crews returned to Earth. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. They were not just being kicked out. They were being completely isolated, cut off from the galaxy entirely. As the human delegation was escorted from the assembly hall, Sarah caught the eye of several delegates from smaller species. She saw something there that gave her hope. Fear, yes, but also anger. They understood that if this could happen to humanity, it could happen to them too. At the transport bay, as they prepared to return to their ship for the journey back to Earth, Dr. Park turned to Sarah with tears in his eyes. "What have we done?" he whispered. "We've doomed our species to isolation. We'll never advance beyond our current technology level. Our children will grow up cut off from the galaxy." Sarah looked back at the massive station that housed the Confederation's government, then at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, and 12 human colonies and millions of people who were about to learn that their galaxy had just become much smaller. "No," she said quietly. "We've been set free." Dr. Park stared at her. "Free? Sarah, they've just locked us in a box and thrown away the key." Sarah smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "They think they have. But they've also just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They've underestimated what humans can do when we have no choice but to succeed." As their ship pulled away from the station and began the long journey home, Sarah made a silent promise. The Confederation thought they were sending humanity into exile to slowly wither and die, forgotten by the galaxy. They were wrong. Humanity would not wither. They would grow stronger, and someday, they would return to remind the galaxy what a terrible mistake it was to cage the human spirit. Behind them, The lights of the Confederation station grew smaller and smaller until they were just another. 20 years had passed since the Great Exile, and Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Titan Station, watching cargo ships move between the massive orbital platforms that surrounded Saturn. Where once there had been a single research outpost, now there was a thriving industrial complex that rivaled anything the Confederation had built. Elena remembered the dark early years after the exile, the economic collapse when trade with alien worlds stopped overnight, the despair when human colonies outside the quarantine zone were forcibly evacuated, their people stripped of everything except the clothes they wore and shipped back to Earth like unwanted cargo. The fear that humanity would indeed wither away in isolation, just as the Confederation had planned, but humans had a talent for making the impossible possible. "Commander, the test flight is ready for departure," announced Lieutenant Morrison from behind her. The young officer had never known a galaxy where humans were welcome. To him, this isolation was normal, and humanity's achievements in the past 20 years were simply what people did. Elena turned from the window and made her way to the command center. The station hummed with activity as technicians prepared for humanity's most ambitious project yet. They called it Project Ghost, and if it worked, it would change everything. Director Marcus Webb waited for her in the command center, his hair now completely gray but his eyes still sharp with the intelligence that had guided humanity through its darkest period. When the Confederation cast them out, the people of Earth had chosen him to lead them into the unknown. It was the best decision they ever made. "How are our volunteers feeling?" Webb asked, nodding toward the main display screen that showed the sleek test ship floating in space nearby. "Captain Rodriguez says his team is ready," Elena replied. "The stealth systems have tested perfectly in computer simulations. Now we find out if they work in reality." Webb smiled grimly. 20 years ago, the Confederation told us we were too primitive to handle advanced technology. Today we test technology they never bothered to invent. Elena understood his satisfaction. Cut off from alien knowledge, humans had been forced to innovate in ways they never would have attempted while following Confederation guidelines. The stealth system was just one example. While alien civilizations relied on massive energy shields and overwhelming firepower, humans had learned to become invisible. The breakthrough had come from Dr. Sarah Kim, a physicist who had been studying the quantum properties of space itself. She discovered that by manipulating certain subatomic fields, a ship could become effectively invisible to most detection systems. It was not true invisibility, but it was close enough. "Beginning test sequence," announced Captain Rodriguez's voice from the communication system. "All systems show green. Initiating stealth field in 3, 2, 1 mark." On the main screen, the test ship simply vanished. One moment it was there, a clear outline against the stars, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space. Elena felt a chill of excitement. The sensors showed no trace of the ship. As far as their instruments were concerned, Captain Rodriguez and his crew had simply ceased to exist. "Rodriguez, report status," Webb ordered. "Stealth field stable," came the reply from apparently empty space. "All systems normal. Beginning movement test." For the next 2 hours, they put the invisible ship through its paces. It could move, turn, and even fire weapons while remaining undetected. The only limitation was that it could not use its main engines at full power without disrupting the stealth field. But that was a small price to pay for true invisibility. When the test ended and the ship reappeared, the command center erupted in cheers. Elena found herself grinning like a child. They had done it. They had created something the mighty Confederation, with all their advanced science, had never achieved. But Director Webb remained serious. "This is just the beginning," he reminded them. "Stealth technology is useless if we have nowhere to go." That was the other part of humanity's transformation. Dr. James Park, the same scientist whose communication breakthrough had led to their exile, had revolutionized terraforming technology. Working with limited resources and no alien guidance, he had developed methods for making dead worlds habitable in decades instead of centuries. The key insight had come from studying Earth's own history. Instead of trying to create perfect Earth-like conditions immediately, Park's team learned to work with each planet's existing characteristics. Desert worlds became water farms using underground aquifer systems. Ice worlds were turned into agricultural centers using geothermal heating. Even radiation-blasted planets could be made livable with the right combination of atmospheric processors and protective domes. In 20 years, humanity had gone from 12 colonies to over 40 inhabited worlds, all of them inside the quarantine zone that the Confederation thought would be their prison. Elena walked to another display that showed a map of human space. Beyond the furthest colonies lay the void reaches, a region of space that the Confederation had marked as dangerous and avoided for centuries. Gravitational anomalies, unstable star systems, and navigation hazards made it nearly impossible for conventional ships to travel there safely. But humans were not conventional. "Any word from Captain Harrison's expedition?" Elena asked. Webb nodded toward another screen that showed recent communication logs. "They found it. The 7th habitable world this month, and this one has ruins." Elena raised an eyebrow. Ancient ruins were always interesting, but they had found dozens of dead civilizations in the void reaches. What made this one special? "Not just any ruins," Webb explained. "Advanced technology, possibly more advanced than the Confederation ever achieved. Harrison's team is being very careful, but preliminary scans suggest we might have found something extraordinary." The communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from deep space. Captain Harrison's voice was excited but controlled. "New Geneva base, this is Exploration Ship Pioneer. We have confirmed presence of intact technological installations on the 4th planet. The structures appear to be some kind of manufacturing facility, possibly automated. We're also detecting what might be a massive data storage complex. Request permission to begin detailed investigation." Webb and Elena exchanged glances. This could be the breakthrough humanity needed to take the next step beyond mere survival. "Permission granted, Pioneer," Webb replied. "But maintain full safety protocols. We don't know what killed the previous inhabitants." As Harrison acknowledged the order, another communication came in from a different source entirely. Elena frowned as she read the signal identification. It was not from any human ship or colony. "Director," she said quietly, "we're receiving a distress call from outside the quarantine zone." Webb turned to face her fully. "What kind of distress call?" Elena's fingers flew over her control panel, analyzing the signal. "Zephyrian frequency. Standard Confederation emergency codes. It's coming from the edge of the void reaches, just outside our territory. For 20 years, humanity had had no contact with any alien species. The Confederation's quarantine had been absolute. Now someone was asking for help. "Play the message," Webb ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was definitely Zephyrian, with the characteristic clicking undertones of their speech. But there was something else in it too. Desperation. "This is Zephyrian research vessel Deep Current to any ships in range. We are trapped in a gravitational anomaly and losing life support. Our navigation systems have failed and we cannot escape. We have approximately 6 hours of air remaining. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need immediate assistance." Elena checked the signal origin on her display. "They're about 3 light hours from our nearest patrol route. We could reach them in time." Webb was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Elena knew what he was considering. The Confederation had exiled humanity and forbidden any contact. Helping this ship would be a direct violation of the quarantine that had isolated humanity for 2 decades. But it would also be the right thing to do. "Elena," Webb said finally, "contact Captain Rodriguez. Tell him his stealth ship just got its first real mission." Elena smiled as she opened the communication channel. "Yes, sir. What should I tell him about the mission parameters?" Webb looked at the map of human space, then at the communication log showing the distress call, then at the reports from the void reaches where Captain Harrison was investigating ancient ruins that might contain technology beyond anything the galaxy had seen. "Tell him we're about to remind the galaxy that humanity is still here," Webb said, "and that we're not the same species they exiled 20 years ago." As Elena sent the orders that would launch humanity's first contact mission in 2 decades, she felt the same excitement she had experienced during the stealth ship test. But this was bigger than new technology or successful terraforming projects. This was the moment when humanity stepped back onto the galactic stage, not as the desperate, isolated species the Confederation had tried to create, but as something new. Something stronger, something the galaxy was not prepared for. Scholar Captain Thaisara had never expected to owe her life to humans. As she stood in the medical bay of the human stealth ship that had rescued her research team from certain death, she tried to understand how everything she knew about the galaxy had been wrong. The humans moved around her with quiet efficiency, checking on her injured crew members and ensuring their life support needs were met. Captain Rodriguez, the human who had commanded their rescue, was nothing like the primitive, violent barbarians the Confederation described in their historical records. "How are your people feeling?" Rodriguez asked, approaching her with what humans called a smile. She had learned to recognize the expression during the 3 days it had taken to bring them to this hidden base, in what the Confederation maps called the Void Reaches. "Much better, thanks to your medical team," Thyssera replied, her mandibles clicking with gratitude. "I must admit, Captain, your technology is far more advanced than our intelligence report suggested." Rodriguez's smile became wider. "Intelligence reports? You mean the Confederation is still keeping track of us?" Thyssera realized she had said too much, but honesty seemed appropriate given the circumstances. "Limited surveillance only. Long-range scans of your border systems. The official position is that humanity has stagnated in isolation and poses no threat to galactic stability." "And what do you think now?" Rodriguez asked. Thyssera looked around the medical bay with its clean, efficient design and technology she could barely understand. "I think the Confederation has made a serious mistake." That conversation had led to the most important meeting in galactic history. Now, 2 weeks later, Thyssera sat in a conference room on New Geneva, the administrative capital of human space, facing Director Marcus Webb and his senior staff. What she had to tell them would change everything. "The Confederation is not the stable, peaceful alliance your people remember," she began. "In the 20 years since humanity's expulsion, things have gotten much worse." Admiral Sarah Chen, daughter of the captain who had defied the Confederation Assembly decades ago, leaned forward. "Where's how?" Thyssera's datapad projected a holographic map of Confederation space. "The Veltar have become increasingly authoritarian. They now control not just technology transfers but also population movements, trade agreements, and even scientific research topics. Any species that questions their decisions faces economic sanctions or military intervention." She highlighted several systems on the map. The Krex Empire has expanded their territory by 30%, conquering or subjugating dozens of smaller civilizations. They claim it's for galactic security, but everyone knows it's simple imperialism. Director Webb studied the map carefully. "And the Zephyrians? My own people have become little more than administrators for the other two powers," Thyssera admitted with obvious pain. "We manage the bureaucracy that keeps the smaller species in line. It's not what we wanted to become." The human leaders exchanged glances. Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral, spoke next. "What about the species that aren't part of the core 3 powers? How do they feel about these changes?" Thyssera manipulated her datapad, and the map changed to show dozens of star systems highlighted in red. "These are what we call the Forgotten Worlds, species that have been conquered, displaced, or economically destroyed by Confederation policies. The Merhai lost their ocean worlds to strip mining operations. The Harmonics were enslaved to power Confederation computer networks. The Wanderer fleets were forbidden from settling any planets and forced to live as permanent nomads." "How many are we talking about?" Webb asked. "Over 200 species controlling approximately 40% of former Confederation territory," Thyssera replied. "But they have no unity, no way to coordinate resistance, and no access to advanced technology." Admiral Chen smiled, and Thyssera recognized it as the same expression her daughter had worn during the rescue mission. "They do now. The next 6 months transformed the political landscape of the galaxy. Using their faster-than-light communication network, humans established contact with resistance movements across Confederation space. The stealth ships that had been developed for exploration became the perfect tools for covert operations. Commander Torres led the first mission to the Merhai home system, where the aquatic species had been forced to work as laborers in their own flooded cities, while alien corporations pumped their oceans dry. The humans arrived invisibly, delivered communication equipment and medical supplies, and disappeared before Confederation forces knew they had been there. The impact was immediate. For the first time in decades, the scattered Merhai colonies could coordinate their activities. Within weeks, they had organized strikes that shut down mining operations across 3 star systems. Similar missions followed. The crystalline Harmonics, whose natural ability to interface with computer systems had made them slaves to Confederation technology, suddenly found themselves equipped with human-designed quantum encryption devices that protected their minds from forced integration. The Wanderer fleets received navigation data for habitable worlds in uncharted space, along with terraforming technology that could turn those worlds into homes. But the most important contact came through pure accident. Captain Lisa Park, Dr. James Park's daughter, was leading a routine supply mission to a harmonic settlement when her ship detected an emergency beacon from what appeared to be an empty system. Investigation revealed a massive hidden base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, home to nearly 1 million refugees from a dozen different species. The base was commanded by someone unexpected, former Veltar Commander Zen Malik, who had been exiled from Confederation space for refusing to participate in the bombardment of a civilian planet. With him were hundreds of other former Confederation military officers who had chosen conscience over career. "We've been waiting for someone like you," Zen Malik told Captain Park during their first meeting. "Someone with the resources and technology to actually challenge the system instead of just hiding from it." The alliance between humans and the exile base transformed scattered resistance into organized rebellion. Zen Malik brought detailed knowledge of Confederation military tactics, supply lines, and weak points. His officers provided training for resistance fighters and intelligence about upcoming Confederation operations. Within a year, the Free Worlds Alliance had grown from a human initiative to a galaxy-spanning coalition. Each member species maintained their independence and cultural identity, but they shared technology, resources, and mutual defense agreements. The Confederation's response was swift and brutal. High Chancellor Zenthara declared the Alliance a terrorist organization and authorized the use of military force to crush any rebellion. Krek's War Master Gorthak led punitive expeditions that destroyed civilian targets and took hostages to discourage resistance. But the rebels had learned from humanity's example. Instead of meeting the Confederation in open battle, they used mobility, stealth, and superior coordination to strike where their enemies were weakest. The first major victory came at the Battle of Kepler's Gate, a vital hyperspace junction that connected dozens of star systems. Alliance forces, led by Admiral Vasquez, used the gravitational anomalies of nearby neutron stars to trap a Confederation fleet twice their size, destroying half the enemy ships while suffering minimal losses themselves. The victory sent shockwaves through both the Confederation and the resistance movements. It proved that the mighty Confederation military could be beaten by coordinated opposition, but the real triumph was political. News of the victory spread through the galaxy, despite Confederation attempts at censorship. Oppressed species who had never dared resist suddenly began organizing their own uprisings. Even some members of the core Confederation species began questioning their government's policies. Scholar Captain Thaisara, now serving as the Alliance's chief intelligence coordinator, brought this news to Director Webb during one of their regular briefings. "Support for the war is declining on all 3 Confederation homeworlds," she reported. "The Veltar Assembly is seeing unprecedented protests. Zephyrian trade guilds are demanding an end to military spending that's disrupting commerce. Even some Krek's military units are refusing orders to attack civilian targets." Webb studied the intelligence reports with satisfaction. "How long do you think the Confederation can maintain this level of military activity?" "Not long," Thaisara replied. "They're fighting a galaxy-wide insurgency with conventional forces designed for traditional warfare. Every month they continue this campaign, they lose more ships, more resources, and more political support." Admiral Chen entered the briefing room with news that would change everything. "Director, we've just received a communication from Earth. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Confederation fleet moving toward the Sol system. It appears they're planning to break the quarantine and attack our homeworld directly." The room fell silent. For 25 years, the quarantine around human space had been absolute. The Confederation had been content to leave humanity isolated, as long as they stayed within their designated boundaries. Now that was about to change. "How long do we have?" Webb asked. "Approximately 6 weeks until they reach the outer edge of the Sol system," Chen replied. Webb looked around the room at his advisors, both human and alien. They had built something remarkable in the past few years. A true alliance of Free PO Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the tactical display with growing concern as another alliance fleet went dark. The Confederation's counteroffensive had been more brutal and effective than anyone had anticipated. In just 3 months, they had recaptured 4 major star systems and scattered the resistance forces that had taken years to organize. "Report from the Mare High sector," announced Commander Torres from the communications station. "The Third Fleet has been forced to abandon their positions. Confederation forces are bombarding the civilian evacuation sites." Elena's jaw tightened. High Chancellor Zenthara and War Master Gorthak had abandoned any pretense of following the laws of warfare. If they could not defeat the Alliance military forces, they would destroy everything the rebels were trying to protect. "What about our reinforcements from the harmonic worlds?" Elena asked. "Still 3 days out," Torres replied. "The Confederation is jamming our FTL communication network with some kind of new technology. Our coordination advantage is disappearing." Elena nodded grimly. For the past 2 years, the Alliance's greatest strength had been their ability to coordinate operations across the galaxy in real time, while Confederation forces relied on slower, traditional communication methods. Now that advantage was gone, and the rebels were discovering just how outmatched they were in terms of pure military might. The bridge's main screen flickered to life with an incoming transmission from Director Webb on New Geneva. The old man looked exhausted, but his voice was steady as always. "Elena, we've just received intelligence from our sources inside Confederation space. They're not just trying to crush the rebellion. This is a total war of extermination. Any species that joined the Alliance is being marked for complete destruction." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean, complete destruction?" "Orbital bombardment of populated worlds. Systematic destruction of industrial facilities. They're not trying to reconquer these systems, they're trying to make them uninhabitable. The goal is to eliminate the Alliance by eliminating everyone who might support it." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. This was not a conventional war with limited objectives. The Confederation was willing to commit genocide on a galactic scale to maintain their power. "There's more," Webb continued. "Our long-range scouts report that the Confederation fleet heading for Earth has been reinforced. We're looking at over 3,000 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts. They mean to end this war by destroying humanity's homeworld." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the billions of people on Earth who had never asked to be part of this galactic conflict. They had been exiled for refusing to surrender their scientific achievements, and now they faced extinction for daring to help other oppressed species. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked. 18 days, Webb replied. "And Elena, our defense fleet is not going to be enough. Even with the Home Guard and all our orbital platforms, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. Elena opened her eyes and looked around at her bridge crew. They were humans, harmonics, Mare High, and former Confederation officers who had chosen to join the rebellion. They represented everything the Alliance stood for. Different species working together as equals. "Director," she said firmly, "we're not going to let them reach Earth." Webb's eyebrows rose. "Elena, I appreciate the sentiment, but we simply don't have the ships to stop a fleet that size in open space." "Then we don't fight them in open space," Elena replied. "We fight them where we have the advantage." 3 hours later, Elena stood before a holographic map in the Alliance's mobile command center. Addressing the largest gathering of rebel leaders in the war's history, ships from dozens of species had converged at the rendezvous point, their commanders participating through secure FTL communication links. "The Confederation is making the same mistake they've made throughout this war," Elena began. "They think this is a conventional conflict where the side with the most ships wins. But they're wrong. This is a war of ideas, and ideas can't be destroyed by orbital bombardment." Former Veltar Commander Zen Malik spoke from his command ship. "Admiral Vasquez, with respect, the Confederation fleet heading for Earth is not interested in ideas. They have enough firepower to crack a planet, which is exactly why we're going to stop them before they get there," Elena replied. She manipulated the holographic map to show the route the Confederation fleet was taking toward Earth. "They're following standard military doctrine, taking the most direct hyperspace route through well-mapped systems. That route takes them through the Kepler Junction, where we defeated them before." Mare High Fleet Commander Thalessa's aquatic form rippled with skepticism. "The junction is heavily fortified now. They learned from their previous defeat." "Yes, they did," Elena agreed. "They built massive defense platforms and stationed a significant fleet there, which means they're not expecting us to attack it again." The commanders looked at each other with varying degrees of confusion and concern. Finally, Harmonic Coordinator Vexishi spoke, their crystalline form gleaming as they processed information at superhuman speed. "Admiral, you are suggesting a direct assault on the most heavily defended position in Confederation space, using forces that are already depleted from months of fighting. The probability of success appears minimal." Elena smiled. "Not if we do it right. The Confederation has spent so much effort fortifying the junction against external attack that they've forgotten about the danger from within." She manipulated the display to show detailed scans of the junction's defensive installations. "Those platforms are powerful, but they're also massive and immobile. And like all Confederation technology, they rely on harmonic interfaces for their computer systems." Vexishi's form flickered with understanding. "You want us to sabotage the defenses from the inside?" "Better than that," Elena replied. "I want you to turn them against the Confederation fleet. When they arrive at the junction expecting safe passage, their own defenses will destroy them." The plan was audacious beyond anything the Alliance had attempted before. A small team of harmonic specialists, transported by human stealth ships, would infiltrate the junction's defense platforms. Using their natural ability to interface with computer systems, they would reprogram the platform's targeting systems while remaining undetected. Meanwhile, the Alliance fleet would position itself in the nearby asteroid fields, hidden among the gravitational anomalies that made the region so dangerous for conventional navigation. When the Confederation fleet arrived, they would find themselves caught between their own defensive platforms and a rebel force that could appear and disappear at will. The operation began 6 days before the Confederation fleet was due to arrive at the junction. Commander Torres led the stealth ship squadron that delivered the harmonic infiltration teams to their targets. The platform's harmonic interfaces had been designed to prevent external hacking, but they had no defense against harmonics who could physically connect to their systems. "Phase 1 complete," reported Vexishi from inside the central command platform. "We have control of the targeting systems. The platforms will recognize all Confederation ships as hostile targets while ignoring Alliance vessels." Elena felt a moment of satisfaction, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. "All Alliance units move to attack positions. Remember, we only get one chance at this." The Confederation fleet arrived at the junction exactly on schedule, 3,000 ships moving in perfect formation through hyperspace. Admiral Gextar, the Krex commander leading the fleet, was confident that nothing could stop his advance toward Earth. The junction's defenses would protect his ships while they prepared for the final assault on humanity's homeworld. What happened next would be remembered as the greatest military disaster in Confederation history. As the lead elements of the Confederation fleet emerged from hyperspace, the junction's defense platforms immediately opened fire. Massive energy beams designed to destroy attacking fleets instead tore through Confederation dreadnoughts and cruisers. Admiral Gextar's flagship was among the first to die, caught completely off guard by the attack from his own defenses. Before the surviving Confederation ships could react, the Alliance fleet emerged from the asteroid fields like ghosts materializing from the void. Stealth ships appeared inside the enemy formation, firing point-blank into unshielded engines and weapon systems. Mare-high torpedo boats used their superior speed to dart between the massive Confederation vessels, striking critical targets and vanishing again. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. Of the 3,000 ships that had arrived to destroy Earth, fewer than 500 escaped. The rest were destroyed by their own defenses or by Alliance forces that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Elena stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display show the scattered remnants of the Confederation fleet fleeing in all directions. It was the most complete military victory in the war, but she felt no satisfaction. Too many people had died on both sides for this conflict that should never have started. "Admiral," announced Torres, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Confederation vessels. What are your orders?" The final battle for Earth began not with weapons fire, but with betrayal from an unexpected source. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the massive Confederation fleet approach the outer edge of the Sol system. High Chancellor Zenthara had been overthrown, but War Master Gorthak had refused to accept the peace negotiations. Instead, He had gathered the remaining Loyalist forces for one last desperate assault on humanity's homeworld. "Contact from the lead Confederation vessel," announced Lieutenant Kim from the communications station. "They're requesting permission to approach Earth under a flag of truce." Sarah frowned. After years of brutal warfare, Gorthak was suddenly interested in talking. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing not War Master Gorthak as expected, but a Veltar officer Sarah had never seen before. The alien's pale blue skin was marked with the scars of recent battle, and his eyes held a weariness that spoke of too much death. "I am Commander Vexthul of the Confederation's 7th Fleet," the officer said. "I carry a message for the human leadership from War Master Gorthak." "We're listening," Sarah replied. "The War Master acknowledges that the Confederation as we knew it is finished. Too many species have joined your alliance. Too many of our own people have turned against us, but he will not surrender Earth to what he sees as a rebellious colony that has forgotten its place." Sarah felt a chill. "What does that mean?" Vexthul's expression became grim. "It means he has armed his flagship with a planet-killer weapon. Unless humanity agrees to unconditional surrender and dissolution of the Alliance, he will use it to destroy Earth and everyone on it." The command center fell silent. Sarah stared at the screen, trying to process what she had just heard. Gorthak was threatening to commit genocide on a scale never before seen in galactic history. "How long do we have?" she asked. 6 hours, Vexthul replied. "But Commander Chen, there is something else you should know. Many of us in the fleet disagree with the War Master's decision. We came here to fight a military campaign, not to murder billions of civilians." Before Sarah could respond, the communication cut out. She immediately opened a channel to Director Webb on Earth's surface. "Marcus, did you monitor that transmission?" Webb's face appeared on screen, looking older than his years. "I did. Sarah, we need to begin immediate evacuation procedures. Even if we can only save a fraction of Earth's population, we have to try." Sarah shook her head. "There isn't time. 8 billion people can't be evacuated in 6 hours. We need another solution." She turned to her tactical officer. "What's the status of our defense fleet?" 200 ships, including the Home Guard and everything we could pull back from the outer systems," came the reply. "Against Gorthak's fleet of 800 vessels, including that dreadnought with the planet killer." Sarah closed her eyes, thinking furiously. The Alliance had achieved so much in the past few years, uniting dozens of species in a common cause for freedom. They had defeated the Confederation military and sparked uprisings across the galaxy. But now it might all end with the destruction of humanity's homeworld, unless she could find a way to turn the situation around. "Open a channel to all Alliance forces in the system," she ordered. "All frequencies, emergency priority." As her communication officer complied, Sarah began speaking to every Alliance ship, station, and outpost within range. "This is Admiral Chen to all Alliance forces. In 6 hours, War Master Gorthak intends to use a planet-killer weapon against Earth, unless we surrender unconditionally. I want to be clear about what that surrender would mean. It would mean the dissolution of the Alliance, the return of all member species to Confederation control, and the end of everything we've fought for." She paused, looking around at her mixed crew of humans, harmonics, Merhai, and former Confederation officers who had joined their cause. "But I also want to be clear about something else. We didn't fight this war just to protect humanity. We fought it to prove that different species can work together as equals. That freedom is worth defending no matter the cost, and that no one has the right to decide the fate of billions of innocent people." The responses came flooding in immediately. Captain Rodriguez from his stealth ship squadron. "Human or alien, we stand together." Merhai Fleet Commander Thalessa. "The depths call to us, but we choose the stars." Harmonic Coordinator Vexishi. "Unity through diversity, strength through cooperation." Most surprising of all was a transmission from Commander Vexthul aboard the Confederation fleet. "Admiral Chen, approximately 200 ships in this fleet are prepared to stand with you against the War Master's madness." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "All forces prepare for Operation Homecoming. We're going to end this war where it started, with humans refusing to surrender their principles." The battle plan was desperate but brilliant. While the Alliance defense fleet engaged Gorthak's Loyalist forces in open combat, the stealth ships would infiltrate the Confederation formation and locate the dreadnought carrying the planet killer. Meanwhile, the Confederation defectors would create chaos within their own fleet. making it impossible for Gorthak to coordinate his forces effectively. The battle began 3 hours before Gorthak's deadline. When Alliance forces opened fire on the outer edge of the Confederation fleet, Sarah watched from Luna Station as ships from dozens of species fought side by side, their weapons creating brilliant flashes of light against the darkness of space. But the real drama was taking place inside the enemy formation, where Confederation ships were turning on each other as officers chose sides in the galaxy's future. Commander Vexthul's forces attacked Gorthak's loyalists from within, creating the confusion Captain Rodriguez needed to locate the dreadnought. Found it, Rodriguez reported over the communication system. War Master Gorthak's flagship dead center of their formation. The planet killer is some kind of gravitational weapon that can destabilize a planet's core. Sarah felt her heart racing. Can you disable it? Negative. Too many defensive systems and the weapon is integrated into the ship's main reactor. But I have another idea. Before Sarah could ask what he meant, she saw it happening on her tactical display. Rodriguez's stealth ship was approaching the dreadnought on a collision course, moving too fast for the defensive systems to track. Rodriguez, what are you doing? Sarah demanded. What humans do best, came the reply. Something crazy that might just work. If I can overload their reactor at the moment they fire the planet killer, the explosion should contain the gravitational pulse. Sarah realized what he was planning. That's a suicide run. The explosion will destroy your ship. Maybe. But it's better than letting them destroy Earth. Besides, I've always wanted to see if our stealth technology works at point-blank range. Sarah watched helplessly as Rodriguez's ship disappeared from sensors, presumably activating its stealth systems for the final approach. Around her, the command center had fallen silent as everyone realized what was happening. Then War Master Gorthak's voice boomed across all frequencies. Humans, you have 1 minute to surrender, or I will destroy your world and everyone on it. The tactical display showed the dreadnought's weapon systems powering up, gravitational fields beginning to form around the massive ship. In 60 seconds, those fields would be projected toward Earth with enough force to tear the planet apart. 50 seconds, announced Lieutenant Kim, her voice barely audible. Sarah opened a channel to Earth's surface. Marcus, it's been an honor serving with you. Director Webb's reply was steady despite the circumstances. The honor has been mine, Sarah. Whatever happens, we've shown the galaxy what humanity can achieve. 30 seconds. Sarah looked around at her crew, human and alien faces united by common purpose. They had come so far from the day when Captain Sarah Chen, her mother, had defied the Confederation Assembly and led humanity into exile. 10 seconds. The dreadnought's weapon reached full power, gravitational forces building to planet-killing intensity. War Master Gorthak was about to commit the greatest act of genocide in galactic history. 5 seconds. Sarah closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for Captain Rodriguez and his crew. 0. The explosion was visible. From Earth's surface, a brief new star that outshone the sun for several seconds. When the light faded, War Master Gorthak's dreadnought was gone, along with the planet killer weapon and the man who would have used it. But Rodriguez's ship was still there, drifting powerless but intact near the site of the explosion. His voice came over the communication system, weak but triumphant. Stealth technology works great at point-blank range. Who knew? The battle ended within the hour. With Gorthak dead and his weapon destroyed, the remaining Confederation loyalists surrendered rather than continue a hopeless fight. Commander Vexthul formally transferred command of the surviving Confederation forces to Alliance authority, marking the end of 800 years of authoritarian rule. 5 years later, Sarah Chen stood in the same command center, but everything had changed. Through the massive windows she could see ships from hundreds of species moving peacefully through Earth's orbital space. The planet that had once been exiled from galactic civilization was now the seat of the Free World's Assembly, where every species had an equal voice regardless of their size or technological development.